Hello and welcome to the Geeks Review. I'm Royce.
I'm Jacob.
Before Saw, before Freddy Krueger, and before Norman Bates, horror cinema was dominated by the Universal movie monsters, the most prominent of which was The Mummy, starring Boris Karloff. But before cinematic universes, before The Favourite, and before Looney Tunes back in action, there was The Mummy starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. This was released in 1999 or 2000 and saw two sequels. The Mummy Returns a few years later. It's not called The Mummy Returns a few years later, it's called The Mummy Returns. And The Mummy 3, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor in 2008. These are some of your favourite movies, the first two.
Absolutely. They are two of my comfort movies. I've watched them 100 times. I fall in love with the cast again every time I watch it. It is just, I love these movies. They inform my entire sexuality in my life going forward.
Oh, you and the entire generation who did grow up on these films.
I know a lot of people who are very influenced by those movies.
There is so much to take in. I mean, you've got Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. You've got Ardith Bay,
played by Oded Fair, I believe. I can't remember
you
how to say his
that.
last name. I apologise.
You say that, and I was like, I completely forgot his name, but you said that. I'm like, yeah, that's him. Yeah, there's a lot in this film.
Jonathan, whose actor I can't remember.
John Hannah, thank you. Also, one of my favourite comic relief characters of all time because he's not just useless. And he's got a lot of depth to him.
He has, and there's a lot of theories like he's a war vet, he's recovering. Considering he's such a good sharpshooter, I subscribe to all these theories.
Yeah, like I said, that's just one tiny facet of this film.
Oh, absolutely. Arnold Vosloo as Imhotep, fantastic, brilliant job. Actually speaks ancient Egyptian.
Yes. And, I mean, I had seen the first two films. I didn't get to see them as a child. I watched them fairly recently. But last night I did watch the third one. And I came to realise, wow, it's really lacking Ardith Bay and Imhotep. And, I mean, it would have been probably a bit crap if they'd gone that route again. Although, to be fair, having them in it would have really livened it up.
Yes, and no disrespect to Maria Bello. She did a fine job as the recast Evie, but she didn't have quite the chemistry that Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser had. They had just the perfect chemistry together for the first two movies. They just matched right away on screen. It was good. Really,
I mean, great characters all around. I mean, like Evie, particularly inspirational for a lot of girls who watched her growing up. You know,
it was because you got to see a capable female character who wasn't capable by just doing the stuff typically associated with guys. She wasn't just the action hero badass, which is what most people do when they say, we want to make a strong female character, let's give her a gun.
Yeah.
Which, violence does not a strong character to make. Her strength comes from the fact she is easily the most intelligent person on their team, and everyone knows what the hell she's doing. And which also speaks to how they played Brendan Fraser's character, Rick, in that he knows this. Whenever there's something to do with thinking, he takes a step back and lets Evie take the charge. He only steps in when it comes to the tussling. Because he is a rough and ready man. He is from the French Foreign Legion. He knows how to handle himself in a fight. He knows how to handle himself in a swashbuckling adventure, but he doesn't know jack doodly about Egyptian artifacts.
It's like combined they make Indiana Jones, but by spreading them across two characters,
it becomes just even more compelling.
Yeah.
And then you have Jonathan, Evie's brother, who is meant to be the comic relief, but like we said before, has a surprising amount of depth. He's incredibly likable, a complete idiot, but at the same time, very capable in his own right. And of course, then there's Ardith Bay, played by Oded Fair, who is just obscenely attractive. Fun fact, he was meant to be covered in tattoos, but the director said, no, he's too attractive.
Yeah, so they just give him those few, and it just enhances.
I will say, 3 times throughout the movie, he is subtitled when he's speaking Egyptian. However, if you play those 3 clips together, despite the subtitles being different, he says the exact same thing every time with different inflections and different stresses on the words. And it's the funniest thing to notice after. He's like, that is lazy.
I got to check that out.
Yes.
But yeah, what is the story of The Mummy?
Story of The Mummy is essentially, it starts with Rick O'Connell, Brendan Fraser's character, and his friend Benny Gabor, played by Kevin O'Connor. By the way, one of my favourite snivelling coward sidekick villain characters in any movie ever. He is brilliant in this movie.
He does that very well. I remember he plays...
he was also Igor in Van Helsing.
Was he?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't actually... The Hugh Jackman one.
Yes, fantastic
I haven't
movie.
got to that one yet, but he was in There Will Be Blood with... I cannot remember his...
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis, and he plays his brother. He plays his brother. And yeah, very he's got that down, doesn't he?
He is.
And I imagine for Igor.
He was also in a horror movie called Deep Rising, which is a fantastic B-movie cruise ship horror movie. And he is just the best part of that movie. He is a fantastic actor in anything he's in. He plays the same kind of character, but he does it so well you don't even care.
I remember his role in The Mummy when he actually is confronted by Imhotep.
He has basically a keychain on his neck that is covered in different religious symbols.
Yeah.
And he has memorized the prayers of all these different religions, just in case.
Yeah, just in case. And he goes through them. It's like, not this one, not that one. And when he finally gets to the one that, makes Imhotep stop and go like, oh, you're going to be my henchman.
You're going to be handy.
Yeah.
But anyway, the story. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Story is Rick O'Connell and Benny fighting in the ruins of Hamunaptra, which is the teacher of the place a lot of the movie takes place in. And they retreat from the people who are attacking them back into the ruins after they won't follow them. And then Rick sees a face come out of the ground and chase him away, which he then runs into the desert. Magi, who are the guardians of the tomb, are like, lol, Dev's going to kill this dude. It doesn't, spoiler alert. And then we cut to the library where Evie is causing trouble.
Yes.
She means well, but she's a bit clumsy and she ends up wrecking the entire library. Her brother appears to comfort her after trying to bring on some more nonsense. He takes her to meet Rick. Rick's like, I could take it to Hamunaptra. She's like, sweet. He's like, I need you to make sure I don't die. She's like, I'll do what I can. It works. Off they go to Hamunaptra. Hijinks ensue. And Armageddon. When they awaken, Imhotep, played by Arnold Vosloo, who is one of my favourite movie villains. He doesn't say much, but he just has a very expressive face. He has some of the best expressions I've ever seen. He has a very commanding, imposing presence in every scene he's in.
Yeah.
And a lot of the effects for the time were quite fantastic. Like, still juicy and dehydrated Imhotep is horrifying looking.
In many ways, yeah.
And it's brilliant. And there's also Untitled, who I can't remember how to pronounce her actress's name, so I'm not going to insult her by doing that. She's also fantastic, and she is the central reason why Imhotep is naughty. He wants to bring her back from the dead because she was the pharaoh's lover, and he loved her, and she loved him, and the pharaoh was like, that's not good, I don't like this, I'm going to kill you both. Imhotep was buried in a sarcophagus and cursed with eternal life and the power to bring about the end of the world, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And Nuxamun was mummified, and he was like, I don't like that, I'm going to bring my girlfriend back. And that's the central premise.
It's kind of like firing a guy and like saying, here's an AR-15 and a bag of grenades.
Exactly. Also a bulletproof vest.
Yeah.
Oh, here's Iron Man's suit of armor. Go nuts.
Pretty much, yeah. I remember Omid Jalili is in this very briefly. He gets killed by scarab beetles.
Yes, he is another fun side character. He just plays the sleazy jailer who was trying to hang Rick at the start of the movie.
Yeah. I love seeing him in things.
He's fun. He's always
I like
fun.
him. But yeah, great film, this one.
Yes, and you get to see 4 Americans get absorbed, which is always... It's nice to see Americans getting their due, you know?
Yeah. That's true. Like that. But yeah, I don't know why I missed out on seeing this film for so long. I don't know. I just never came up on my radar. But everyone else, like I said, it was massively influential.
Oh, yeah. It influenced a lot of people, and it was back when they made movies with no set plan to make an expanded universe. This was just meant to be a fun movie, and it was. It was just a play on the Karloff movie, but in a much more swashbuckler, Errol Flynn, Indiana Jones style, and it worked really well.
Yeah, it is a combination, because I mean it was initially a horror film, and so many borrowed elements, and the name of Imhotep came from the original. But yeah, this is kind of like the Indiana Jones for, like, 90s, 2000, but it's its own beast. It's that kind of style of film. Like Indiana Jones was inspired by those swashbuckling tales that inspired Spielberg and Lucas, and this is very much in the vein of that. It's the 2000 version, the modern day version, and we had the sequel, which is much of the same stuff in a sense.
It hits a lot of the same strides. It kind of plays the hits a lot. Imhotep comes back for some reason. No one can figure out why. They don't bother explaining it. Fair enough. Anaxamun's back all of a sudden, and he gives him memories back. Rick and Evie are married and have a kid now, which is the worst part of the movie. We don't talk about him. Jonathan's back and causing trouble again. Ardith May comes back because Imhotep's back. So it's very much a let's do this all again gang kind of thing, but it's still good fun. Still has the same charm and wit and humour of the first movie. Still definitely worth watching. It's not as strong as the first movie, but it's still enjoyable. And it's fun to see what they're doing afterwards.
And Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, God, we don't talk about that CGI. One of the worst possible instances of CGI I've ever seen, even for the time.
Yeah, it's the Scorpion King is just this horrible, glistening, computer-generated mass.
Shiny, smooth skin, doesn't look remotely lifelike. It's not great.
Fantastic gif, though, when Rick kills him and Imhotep runs up.
No! That's a good one.
When you join the fandom in the middle of drama. Visual, talking about a visual in an audio show.
Yeah, probably not the best thing, but yeah, no, it's the first two movies are fantastic, all-time classics. They're a great time, a lot of fun. You're gonna just sit down, you turn your brain off, and you just enjoy watching these attractive, fun people go causing trouble and going on adventures.
Yeah, like I said, there is just so much depth. Like, I mean, there's the scene at the camp where Evie gets a bit tipsy, and sort of, goes off, and when you kind of see another side to her, as opposed to this scholarly sort of, very serious, very, you would almost think uptight, and to sort of see that. Maybe I'm imagining it.
No, when she just kind of just... And it also shows that she's starting to feel more comfortable around Rick.
Yeah.
And also shows that Rick, while being quite rough, is also a gentleman. Because he still treats her well. He doesn't try to take advantage of anything. He's quite gentle with her at that time. Not mention the fact that he is romantic in his own rough, rapscallion way when he pinches an archaeologist kit to give to her. It's like he shows he knows her interest and wants to encourage her interests, but he's also a scoundrel.
And he did a lot of his own stunts.
He did. Brendan Fraser did good work there.
And he's come out and said that he basically wrecked himself.
Yeah, which wasn't the best decision. Maybe you should just stunt man in future.
Yeah, and God, some of those stunts are just insane. The third film, which we'll only tap into a little bit.
Briefly, yes.
Yeah, but it's set in China. It's set in the 40s now, post World War II. No mention of that really at all.
No.
But again, you get the characters. Like you said, Maria Bello as Evie. She's good, but it's sort of like she's not the same.
Yeah, it's not Rachel Weisz. It hasn't got quite the same chemistry as they did with Brendan, and
It's kind of crazy. It came out in 2008, which is the same year as The Dark Knight, as Iron Man, and as the last Indiana Jones film. Funnily enough, yeah,
one we don't talk about.
Which feels like The Mummy feels like it is of the 2000s.
Yeah,
and to think it's there at the same time as like Iron Man, which was like heralding a new age of cinema.
It is a strange thing to think about, that's for sure.
That it's at the same time, yeah. And the CGI is better.
Oh, yeah, that's not exactly a high bar to jump, though, is it?
Yeah. Well, I was like, okay, Jet Li is playing the villain in this. Yeah. He's the terracotta warrior. And
the Dragon Emperor.
Yeah, he's CGI for most of the film. And there was a point like the sort of end of Act 2, climax moment where they're at Shangri-La and he marches towards this rejuvenating pool, and I'm like, oh, cool, okay, we're going to finally get like Jet Li in the flesh. He's a martial artist. We're going to have some amazing fight scenes. He turns into a 3-headed dragon, and I shouted,
yeah, look, the Tomb of the Dragon Emperor wasn't great. It didn't have the same charm. It had grown-up Alex, which was Rick and Evie's son, and he was a shithead.
Yeah, I didn't like him.
Rick was there, but he couldn't do so much. And the big thing, I think, is the mummy in this one, which was the Dragon Emperor, wasn't quite the same presence as Imhotep was. He didn't get to be really be a character. He was nothing but a looming threat.
Yeah, I'd say as well, because, I mean, the CGI for the original film hasn't aged spectacularly. And no. Imhotep as, the decrepit mummy self is horrifying on a number of levels. Like, I mean, there is the body horror thing. There is, like, the concept of the undead walking. But also just the CGI itself is quite,
Oh, yeah. But it's the good kind of bad where it still feels creepy.
Yeah, and that adds
like how a lot of the old 80s horror movies, you could tell it was all fake gore and stuff because it's atrocious, but it still gave an uncanny valley level of creepy to it, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, which the Dragon Emperor lacked, I think. He just sort of looked like every generic, sort of CGI creature of the time.
Yeah, it was... Not as much care was put into the appearance of the mummy, and I think that was a big mistake.
And as well, I mean, with Imhotep, you talk about like how he was cursed with, the power to end the world, basically. But then it's sort of like when the Dragon Emperor wakes up, he just has all these powers and knows how to use them right off the bat when he's been frozen for like hundreds of years.
Yeah, whereas Imhotep's got to go suck off has to go absorb a few Americans before he can really get going,
Yeah, steal the guy's eyes because his eyes are missing.
Yeah, steal the eyes from the one guy with glasses.
Yes! Maybe he saw him and thought, this guy's got supervision.
Bit of an oversight there, Remo.
He just walks around blind for the rest of the film.
Would be funny if he just kept bumping into things.
That's a change that could be made to improve.
But I guess he's also a supernatural being with godlike powers. I don't think bloody vision's going to really stop him much,
He just couldn't rejuvenate the eyes. He just needed eyes to begin with.
I assume he just absorbed the eyes to make better eyes.
Better eyes.
Special eyes.
That's what eye transplants are.
Yeah, I guess, technically. But yes, fantastic movies, the first two. Less than fantastic, the third one. And we do not discuss the Tom Cruise one, which was technically not a sequel. It was a remake of the original Boris Karloff, more reimagining, and it was a Tom Cruise vehicle, which never ends well.
No. He's,
Seeing how it was meant to be, it could have been very good, because the girl who played the mummy in that movie was quite fantastic.
Sophia Botella,
Thank you. She was fantastic as the mummy, and I think she had great potential, but it became a Tom Cruise vehicle because Tom Cruise is an egomaniac.
Oh,
and he poisons any movie he's in these days.
Remember, they released a trailer online in an unfinished state without all the sound effects and the music. So it's like he gets sucked out of a plane, it's just like dead silence. Oh! Ah!
Yes, just the stupid screaming. It was fantastic.
Sophia Botella, though, in the two roles I've seen her in, Kingsman and Star Trek Beyond.
Yes.
Favourite parts of both those films.
She quite good. She has quite a good presence to her.
And she's very different, a very different mummy compared to, like, Imhotep.
Exactly, and she was still got to be an actual presence and a threat in the movie. I just think they didn't do enough with her and focused too much on Tom Cruise doing Tom Cruise things.
It actually tricks me because before we started recording, we were discussing the show *Halt and Catch Fire*, which starred Lee Pace, Mackenzie Davis, and an actor, Scoot McNairy, who was one of those actors for me who was always in stuff, but I never recognised him. And like he was in Batman vs Superman. He was in the movie Frank with Michael Fassbender. He's in a bunch of stuff. Like he was even in one of the many, disposable Liam Neeson action movies.
Ah, yes.
I was like I saw bits of the Tom Cruise mummy, and I'm like, oh, it's Scoot McNairy. I recognise him. No, it's Jake Johnston.
The one time you think you got it this time.
Yeah, it's the guy from the Tag movie, and he voiced, Spider-Man, depressed Spider-Man in Spider-Verse.
And one of my biggest issues is that Tom Cruise has no chemistry whatsoever with any of the other actors.
And who's like 20 years his junior.
Yeah, he's just there to be Tom Cruise and have the Tom Cruise out, and the other characters barely get to be characters around him.
Russell Crowe was in that as Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Which was a sad, desperate way to try and set up the Dark Universe, which felt very clunky and very forced. And I like Russell Crowe, but
yeah, I like Russell Crowe.
He's fun to see in movies, but
when he says "you're a young man" to Tom Cruise, when Tom Cruise is like 10 years older than Russell Crowe.
Yeah,
I know they're actors, but
it lacked charm.
Yeah,
it was trying too hard to be serious and scary, and it came off as crap.
I did hear this might be nonsense, I might be misremembering, but apparently there's a G.I. Joe movie with Brendan Fraser in it, and it was apparently supposed to tie to the Mummy, like he was the great-grandson of Rick or something like that.
Right, that'd be different.
Yeah. And that was then going to tie, because, I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering it, but the 2017 Mummy does have the book in it.
Yeah.
Which is more of like an Easter egg as opposed to like an actual connective tissue. But yeah, they should have just brought Rick back.
They originally, apparently there were plans to connect the Helsing movie with Hugh Jackman to the Mummy. Now that would have been a fantastic crossover.
That would have been. That strikes me as a much more interesting cinematic universe.
Because they're both the same kind of campy, over-the-top horror adventure.
There.
And they would just clash perfectly.
Yeah. That would have been really cool to see.
It would have been fun seeing Brendan Fraser and Hugh Jackman hunting monsters together.
Yeah.
Just quipping and being smartasses and causing trouble.
They could have done that, hey?
Would have been fantastic, but we never got that.
No.
Because life isn't fair.
Nah. And then, I mean, the Dark Universe was, like I said, such a cynical attempt.
It felt like they were trying to just jump on a bandwagon that had already just gone off far away, and it just felt very synthetic.
Yeah, and I mean, Iron Man, like I said, came out the same year as Dragon Emperor, and that, while it has the elements, it was less on the nose about it. It was intelligent, and that's one thing I think that's...
But it still functioned as a standalone movie.
Yeah.
It had a good narrative at a beginning, middle, and end. It had a satisfying conclusion. If they'd ended it with that, fine.
Yeah, and much the same with the original Mummy. I mean,
exactly.
The original Brendan Fraser Mummy.
It would have been it was perfectly functional as a standalone movie. And I think that's what I think people miss. They set up movies to make sure they set up sequels.
Yeah.
There's no satisfying conclusion.
Yeah. Oh. Well, okay, just to sort of wrap up this episode. You did sort of say you'd like to have seen a crossover between Van Helsing
and the Mummy, absolutely.
And the Mummy. What else, like, let's say maybe the Mummy 3 didn't happen, or maybe even go so far to say Mummy 2 didn't happen, if they were to make like a proper franchise connect. I guess if you had the Mummy 2, you can tie that into Van Helsing more. But what would you have liked to have seen from these films? Or do you think perfect as is, forget the bad ones, embrace the good?
I mean, I would have loved to see more of their adventures. I would have liked to see more of them venturing between Rick and Eve getting together and then Alex being born and raised. Would have liked to see more of them actually just being an adventuring couple with Jonathan tagging along and stuff like that. That would have been fun.
That's a really weird choice they did, to jump straight to the kid being born and like being a few years old by the time.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but I'm not a fan of kids, so...
Well, I mean, 20 years has jumped in the space of 8, in real world, to the sequels and all that.
Exactly, which can be a bit jarring. It by no means took away from the movie, but it just... less children was always better.
And I will say with the third one, the son just sort of didn't really strike me as being anything special.
No, he was just kind of there.
Yeah.
Which just made him a bit of a nothing character.
Michelle Yeoh was in it, though. She was great.
Oh, yeah. She's always good to see.
And while you did have a bit of a sword fight between her and Jet Li, it was done too quick.
Oh, yeah. Barely got a chance to enjoy it before it was over.
Yeah.
You can't tease us like that.
No. Oh, yes. Final thoughts on The Mummy?
Good.
Good, yes.
Very good. Excellent, even.
Still good. Wasn't there an animated series?
There was, which was perfectly watchable as a kid. Doesn't really hold up as an adult, but as a kid, perfectly watchable.
I do remember, actually, when watching The Mummy, because, I mean, you think of Mummy and you think of the bandages, but Imhotep is never wrapped in... I mean, you see him, when he's killed,
exactly,
he's wrapped in bandages, but he's not ever the mummy, traditional mummy.
I know, which is a fun concept, but I guess the bandages were probably... They didn't properly mummify him. They just wrapped him up and chucked him in a sarcophagus full of scarabs, so they weren't properly embalmed bandages.
Yeah,
just to stop him from struggling too much.
True. Plus, also, maybe the CGI couldn't have handled, fabric simulation.
Well, true.
Yeah. But that would have been cool. And especially, costumes. I remember in Doctor Who a few years ago, there was a mummy episode, and the mummy in that was super impressive. Really tall, like 7 foot tall guy, super skinny. So he actually looked like they could have like the rib cage and all that without him looking fat. And it was so good and so scary. And proper bandages and all that. But yes, The Mummy. Brendan Fraser.
Fantastic watch. Highly recommend it. Excellent comfort movie.
And they're all on Stan and Foxtel,
yes.
I believe.
And some versions of Netflix.
Sponsored today by NordVPN. Anyway, this has been the Geeks Review. I'm Royce.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.